NASA just made it official. Boeing Starliner's next mission will fly empty. No crew, no astronauts, just an uncrewed test flight scheduled for April 2026. After billions in losses in that terrifying thruster failure that stranded two astronauts in orbit, Boeing's now fighting to prove their spacecraft is even safe enough to carry humans. But here's what everyone's really asking. Is this NASA's way of quietly admitting SpaceX has already won this race? Welcome to Space Update 24 Hours. Let's dive right in. To understand why NASA made this call, we need to rewind to June 2024. Astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams launched aboard Starliner for what should have been a routine 8-day mission to the International Space Station. Instead, they ended up stranded in orbit for 8 months. What went so catastrophically wrong that NASA refused to bring them home on the same spacecraft they arrived in? The answer lies in those thrusters. As Starliner approached the ISS, multiple reaction control thrusters started failing one after another. Engineers on the ground watched in real time as the spacecraft struggled to maintain stable approach. The vehicle did eventually dock, but NASA's safety teams weren't sleeping well. They ran the numbers, analyzed the data, and came to a chilling conclusion. They couldn't guarantee the crew's safe return. So NASA made the unprecedented decision to bring Starliner home empty while Wilmore and Williams stayed aboard the station, waiting for a ride that wouldn't arrive until March 2025. SpaceX stepped in to save the day, launching a Crew Dragon mission in September 2024, with only 2 astronauts instead of the usual 4. Those 2 empty seats? Reserved for Boeing's stranded crew. Think about that for a moment. Boeing's competitor had to rescue Boeing's astronauts. How does a company recover from that kind of public failure? The technical investigation revealed the culprit: tiny Teflon seals inside the thruster valves. When the thrusters fired repeatedly during approach, these seals overheated and began breaking down, disrupting fuel flow and causing erratic performance. Boeing and NASA engineers eventually recreated the exact failure in ground testing, which gave them critical data for the fix. But here's the question that keeps coming up. If they understood the problem well enough to recreate it, why does Starliner need another uncrewed test flight? Shouldn't they just fix it and move on? The answer tells you everything about how seriously damaged confidence in this spacecraft has become. NASA isn't taking any chances anymore. Starliner 1, the upcoming April 2026 mission, is essentially Boeing's last chance to prove the redesigned thruster system works before humans ever climb aboard again. It's a do-or-die moment for the entire program. But the schedule changes reveal an even bigger story. Boeing's original contract from 2014 called for 6 operational crew missions to the ISS when certified. After all the delays, failures, and plan revisions, that number has been slashed. The new manifest looks like this: Starliner 1 as an uncrewed test, followed by only 3 crewed missions before the ISS retires around 2030. There's technically funding for 2 additional optional flights, but with the station approaching end of life, those are looking increasingly unlikely. So Boeing's grand total? 7 Starliner flights ever. 3 test flights and just 4 operational missions. Was that worth the investment? Let's talk about money, because this is where things get really uncomfortable. Boeing has now lost over $2 billion on the Starliner program. Not million, billion, and they're still on the hook for more costs because of how NASA's commercial crew contract works. Unlike traditional government contracts where Boeing could bill NASA for cost overruns, this is a fixed-price deal. NASA pays a set amount for each milestone achieved, period. When Boeing hits delays, needs redesigns, or fails a test, they eat the cost themselves. Every extra month of development, every additional test flight, every redesign comes straight out of Boeing's balance sheet. Industry insiders have described the situation as a financial disaster, and some reports suggest Boeing's management has sworn off fixed-price government contracts entirely after this experience. They want to return to the old cost-plus model, where the government reimburses all expenses plus profit. Can you blame them after hemorrhaging $2 billion? But here's where it gets interesting. Despite the losses, Boeing can't just walk away. They're contractually obligated to fulfill the remaining missions unless NASA releases them, and walking away now would be even more damaging to Boeing's reputation in the space industry than continuing and trying to minimize further losses. So they're stuck between bad options and worse options. Which would you choose? Meanwhile, the contrast with SpaceX couldn't be more stark. While Boeing struggled through years of delays and failures, SpaceX's Crew Dragon has completed 11 operational flights to the ISS with a perfect safety record. Dragon's proven itself reliable, cost-effective, and safe. It's become NASA's workhorse for crew transportation. So why does NASA continue supporting Starliner despite all these problems? The strategic answer is actually pretty smart when you think about it. Right now, NASA depends entirely on one American spacecraft for human spaceflight, Crew Dragon. If something ever grounded Dragon, or if SpaceX shifted fully to Starship development, NASA would suddenly have no domestic option for crew transportation. They'd be dependent on other countries or completely unable to send astronauts to orbit. That's an unacceptable risk for the agency. Having two independent systems provides redundancy and keeps competitive pressure on pricing. Plus, Starliner has one unique advantage that could become crucial in the future. It's launcher agnostic. Unlike Crew Dragon, which was designed specifically for Falcon 9, Starliner can theoretically fly on different rockets. It currently uses ULA's Atlas V, but could potentially be adapted for Vulcan or even Blue Origin's New Glenn. Why does that matter? Because SpaceX plans to eventually retire Falcon 9 and transition everything to Starship. If that happens and Dragon can't be adapted to other rockets, NASA might suddenly need Starliner more than ever. Is Boeing playing the long game here? The launch vehicle situation adds another wrinkle to this story. Boeing originally purchased 9 Atlas V rockets from ULA for the Starliner program. With fewer missions now planned, several of those rockets might go unused. NASA's keeping them as options, but there's talk they could be sold to other customers. Amazon's been buying up Atlas V rockets for its Kuiper satellite constellation, so Boeing might end up selling rockets they can't use to help fund a competitor's internet satellite network. How's that for irony? Public reaction to all these changes has been brutal. Space enthusiasts and taxpayers are openly questioning whether Starliner is worth continuing. One commenter captured the frustration perfectly. At this point, it seems like a big waste of taxpayer money for 4 missions, then ISS goes splash. Another took an even harsher view. By the time anyone attempts to put another station in orbit, Starliner will resemble a Model T compared to anything that can service a station in the future. But the biggest question remains unanswered. Is this revised plan actually saving taxpayers money or costing them more? Boeing's commercial crew contract has a ceiling value of about $4.2 billion under the fixed-price agreement. However, funding only gets released as milestones are completed. There's still roughly $1.4 billion in unobligated funds that hasn't been committed yet. With fewer operational flights now planned, the total cost to NASA should theoretically decrease. Fewer missions means fewer payments. The uncrewed Starliner 1 flight should also cost less than a crewed mission, since it doesn't require all the extra safety systems, simulations, and support infrastructure that human spaceflight demands. But here's what makes people nervous. NASA hasn't publicly disclosed exactly how much less this revised plan will cost. The lack of transparency has even made NASA veterans suspicious. One insider with 46 years at the agency put it bluntly, "Can we get confirmation that Starliner 1 is being done at no additional cost to NASA? Unless that's stated explicitly, I don't trust that Boeing hasn't rolled NASA on the cost issue." That suspicion reflects a broader concern in the space community. Has Boeing been getting special treatment because they're a legacy aerospace giant with deep political connections? Would a newer company have received the same patience and continued funding after $2 billion in losses and multiple critical failures? Here's the bottom line. Boeing has lost over $2 billion, Starliner has 0 successful crewed missions, and SpaceX's Crew Dragon has completed 11 flawless flights. The April 2026 uncrewed test is Boeing's last chance to prove their spacecraft is even safe enough to carry humans. NASA's keeping Starliner alive for backup redundancy, But the competition is essentially over. SpaceX didn't just win this race. They lapped their opponent multiple times while Boeing was still troubleshooting thruster failures. The real question now isn't whether Starliner can catch up. It's whether those final 4 missions will even happen before ISS retires, or if we're watching billions of taxpayer dollars circle the drain on a spacecraft that arrived too late with too many problems. What's your take? Should NASA cut their losses or keep funding Starliner as insurance? Let me know in the comments. If you want to stay ahead on space industry developments like this, hit that like button and subscribe to Space Update 24 Hours. Turn on notifications so you never miss our coverage of SpaceX, Boeing, and the future of commercial spaceflight. We bring you the facts, the analysis, and the stories behind every major development in the space race. Thanks for watching Space Update 24 Hours. We'll see you in the next one.